All right, we're going to use this spreadsheet of Super Bowl winners. So it has every year and the AFC team, the NFC team, and the score for each team. We're going to use this to explore conditional statements a little bit. So right now, this is just a table that I was able to find online somewhere. But what it doesn't tell me is who won each year. Now, I could certainly go through and just check, but I'm going to want to automate this process. So I'd like to have a column that tells me who the winner was. And we're going to use a conditional statement in order to teach the spreadsheet to figure this out for us. So the most common conditional statement that we're going to use over and over and over again in programming is the if statement. Just like any other function in Google Sheets, I'm going to start by telling the computer I want to put in some code. So I throw an equal sign in, and then I'm going to type the word if. And you notice the little tooltip pops up. So let's look at that menu. So an if statement works using a logical expression, also known as a conditional statement or a condition or a Boolean expression. And what that means is a statement that is either true or false. So you can see in the example down below, it says if A2 equals, and then in quotes, foo. So in this example, it's saying, hey, A2, the cell A2, may have the word foo in it. Now in our spreadsheet, it doesn't. It's blank. So if I were to type that in, it would say, well, that's not a true statement. A2 doesn't have foo. Well, based on whether or not this first statement is true, this if statement is going to select either this value or another value. So we can do a really simple example. If 5 is less than 6, that's a logical expression, comma, we'll say math works. But if 5 is not less than 6, we'll say everything is a lie. Now, because 5 is less than 6, the term math works pops up. But if I were to do this and say, if 5 were greater than 6, well, that's false. 5 is not greater than 6. So if that's the case, everything's a lie. So this statement, 5 is greater than 6, is false, so the false condition got chosen. But if I change it, 5 is less than 6, well, that's true, so this statement's true. Well, now that we see how the if statement works, let's try to apply it to our situation here. So the condition I want to check is, who won the game? Now, if the AFC score is bigger than the NFC score, it means the AFC team won the game. So I can say if C4 is greater than E4. If that's the case, so if that is a true statement, C4 is greater than E4, that means the AFC team won. But if it's a false statement, that means the NFC team won. So this says, if the score for the AFC is greater than the NFC, AFC is the winner. But if that's not the case, NFC is the winner. Let's see if it works. So in this first case, it says New England won. It had a higher score than Atlanta. If I drag this down one cell and copy that formula, it says Denver won. It had a higher score than Carolina. If I bring it down again, New England won. It had a higher score than Seattle. Now, you can also notice that all three of these are the AFC side. On this next row, Seattle had a higher score than Denver, so it should give me Seattle. Let's make sure that it works in this situation too. So I'll drag that formula down. It gets Seattle. It looks like it works. So now let's bring this all the way down to the bottom. And I get all my winners. So using a really simple conditional statement, I was able to find the winner of every single game. Now, let's add to that. I'm going to put another column that says game decider. And what I want to do is a slightly more complicated if statement. What I want to know is, could this game have been decided with a field goal? Could it have been decided with a touchdown? Could it have been decided with a safety? Or was it so much it was at least a 2-score game? Now, that's a little bit more complicated, and I can still do it with these if statements. For instance, I could say if the difference in scores was less than a certain number, but you can imagine that this line would start to get really, really long and messy. So this is a perfect opportunity to use a JavaScript function. Let's do this instead. I'm going to go to my tools and go to the script editor. And now I'm going to try to bring you to this screen. So now you should see the script editor screen. I'm going to write a new function, and I'm going to call this, we'll say game decider. So what I want to do is I want to take in two scores. So we'll say the AFC score and the NFC score. Now, if the score was less than 3 or 3 or less, a field goal will decide it. So I'll use my if statement. Now, an if statement exists in JavaScript, similar to how it exists in Sheets, although the syntax is a little different. Type if, and then we're going to put a set of parentheses in, and that's where my logical expression will go. So in this case, I might say if AFC minus NFC is less than 3. So in this case, I'm saying if the AFC score minus the AFC score, the difference between them is less than 3, then a field goal would have won the game. So I'm going to put a little code block here that says, if that's the case, return field goal. I suppose we could actually make this less than or equal to 3, because a field goal would tie the game. So what this says is if the difference in score was less than or equal to 3, a field goal will have tied the game. Now, a secondary part of an if statement, one that's always kind of implied, is if that's not the case, then something else is. So otherwise tends to get paired with an if statement. So right now, if I were to go into this else statement, it's saying that the difference between the game was not less than 3. So maybe what I could say is a touchdown would have been needed. Now, there are some problems with this code, but we're going to save it, and we're going to deploy it, and we're going to test it real fast, because we want to see what actually happens in this situation. So let's go back to our spreadsheet. You should be able to see the spreadsheet again. And we're going to say equals game decider. And what we're going to do is take the AFC score as one input and the NFC score as another input, and close our parentheses, and it should load up the answer. Now this says this game was a touchdown away, when in fact it was. 34 minus 28 is 6 points. A touchdown would have changed the game. If we scroll down to this next game, 24-10, a touchdown wouldn't have decided the game. 10 points for Denver would have only made it 24-17. They still wouldn't have won. So we know we need to update our game a little bit. Now, if I scroll down again, this one says 28-24, a touchdown would have changed the game. Now, this next one has a problem, though. Seattle clearly won by more than a field goal. So we have a bug in our program. There's something wrong with our code. Let's go back and look at it. So we are back to the JavaScript. And what I have here is if the AFC minus the NFC is less than or equal to 3. Well, that assumes that AFC minus NFC is a positive number. Really what I want to do is say if this difference is less than 3 and NFC minus AFC, is less than or equal to 3. Less than or equal to 3. So what I really want to do is find the absolute difference. AFC minus NFC, if this is 10 and 7, I'll get 3. 7 and 10, or 7 minus 10 would be negative 3. Oh, actually, that's not going to make any sense. So let's actually change this around. I'm going to put or AFC minus, actually, you know what I could do? Let's try, we're going to actually take this a little bit differently. Rather than take these two scores, let's just say my difference. So I'm going to change my input entirely. And then what we'll say is if the difference is less than or equal to 3, we have a field goal. Now, we're going to go back and actually change how we send our input to this method. But if our difference is less than or equal to 3, we have a field goal. Now, if we have more than 3, we don't necessarily need a touchdown. So I can take this else statement, which is right now a catch-all for anything that is not a difference of less than 3, and actually tie another if statement to it. So otherwise if. Now, if I'm going to this condition, I already know the difference is not less than or equal to 3. It must be bigger than that. So I'm going to say the difference is less than or equal to 7. That means the game difference is within a touchdown. But now I can have another else statement that's a catch-all and say anything that's not less than or equal to 7, maybe I return the term multi-score. And we'll just use that as a catch-all, multi-score. So let's save this and go back to our spreadsheet and see how that may have changed things. The first thing is, you notice everything has the exact same multi-score, which isn't right anymore. But let's not forget, we changed the format of our method. Now it should only take in one value, not 2. It's going to take in a difference. So instead of C4 and E4, we're going to say C4 minus E4. And if I put that in, we got that game was within a touchdown, and as we scroll down, we should get different results. But we still have a problem because it still says that this Seattle and Denver game was within a field goal. Now the reason it's doing that is because 8 minus 43 is a big negative number, and that's less than 3. So we're actually going to go into this formula and adjust it. We're going to combine a custom function that we wrote with a Sheets function. So if we go in here, I really want to know the absolute value of this difference. So what we can do is say absolute and parentheses, and that gives me the absolute value. Oh, maybe I messed it up. Let's see. What was abs? Oh, just ABS. So the absolute value of a number is ABS. So the absolute value of that difference. And now if I start to scroll down, we want to pay particular attention to the Seattle versus Denver game. And all of a sudden it says it's a multi-score game. So now we're combining Sheets functions with JavaScript functions. If we go all the way down, we now have, using some conditional statements, not only who the winner was for every game, but also a quick piece that tells us how close the game was. Was it multi-score, or was it a touchdown, or was it within a field goal? So that is a quick introduction to conditional statements and how they can be used in Google Sheets.